Hey, it's dark. This is always a good moment. All right. Oh, we're going to go to my neck of the woods today. So we've been in the middle of the Aegean, that part of the Mediterranean that sticks up between Greece and Turkey and the region that's known as Thrace, mostly modern-day Bulgaria. And we were lately at Delos, which the speck in the Aegean that you see circled in red on the map. And now we're going to go over to this part of the Mediterranean world today, to two sites there. And this part of the Mediterranean world is the hinterland of the Ptolemaic kingdom, or Ptolemaic empire. The Ptolemies, of course, are Ptolemy I was one of the generals of Alexander the Great, and he seized Egypt along with Alexander's body. And the dynasty that he founded ruled Egypt for about 300 years. And he fought with his main rival Seleucus for this region, the Levantine coast, the area that today we know of primarily as Lebanon and Israel and Syria and Jordan to some extent, although they're not actually on the coast. And in the 3rd century BCE, the Ptolemies won out. So the Ptolemies were in charge of this region. And you see here in a detail on the map, was really like controlled by the Ptolemies for economic reasons. There was a long coastline. It is very fertile. Lots of things grow here that don't grow well in Egypt, primarily olives, from which you get olive oil, which was an important commodity in the ancient world. You used it for light. You used it to clean yourself. I don't know if you knew this, but this is how a lot of people got clean in antiquity. They would rub, you could try this at home, they would rub olive oil on themselves, and they would scrape it off with a sort of blade thing that's called a strigil. And then you would smell like an olive, and that would be very nice, I suppose. It's all what you get used to. That's why they needed all those little alabastra with the perfume, you know. After you do that, you need a chaser. So anyway, yeah. So olives grow here. Olives and olive trees don't grow in Egypt, so that's would be a commodity that would be useful. Grapes for wine. And so the Ptolemies were very interested in holding on to this sector. This is where Gadara is. Our friend Meleager comes from here. Good to know where these places are, don't you think? Gadara in modern-day Jordan, just south of the Sea of Galilee, on the east side of the Jordan River. So when Meleager says the Attic haunt of Gadara, which is such a weird line that we have now parsed a couple of times, the Attic haunt of Gadara, you can see why it is that he needs to make a special explanation, because this is, let's be honest, the back of beyond. You know, if you come from Athens, or you come from Delos, or any place in the main part of the Greek world, you would have absolutely no idea where Gadara was, and you certainly wouldn't have cared. Meleager, who has a Greek name, speaks Greek, studied Greek philosophy and literature in the schools in Gadara, wants you to know that, all right, Gadara might be at the far end of one of these kingdoms, but they got culture. They know what's what. So that's what he means by that, the Attic haunt of Gadara. It'd be like, I don't know, like somebody from Boise, Idaho, saying, we have a Shakespeare festival. Don't think that just because we're in Boise, we don't know. It's like that. So when you are a king and you control a zone at the far edges of where your officials hang out, you periodically need to send envoys just to make sure that everything is going okay. And Ptolemy II, the son and successor of Ptolemy I, the guy who ruled in the middle of the 3rd century BCE, he was very interested in this area, and he actually did a lot of agricultural experimentation. He was interested in new kinds of cultivars. Had he been living today, he would have definitely been studying on the St. Paul campus, Ptolemy II, because he was interested in developing new strains of plants. And he did a lot of experimenting. So he had to send officials periodically to make sure that everything was okay. And one of the officials that he sent was a guy named Zenon, which is also a Greek name, and Zenon wrote and spoke Greek, like all of the officials in all of this part of the world did. And Zenon was a very officious bureaucrat on the behalf of Ptolemy II, and he kept good receipts. And we have a lot of his receipts and a lot of his letters from a papyrus archive that was discovered in Egypt in the early part of the 20th century. And his receipts have dates. And this is one of the papyri from the Zenon archive, and it dates between the 1st of February and the 21st of June, 259 BCE. And in it, Zenon goes from place to place checking on the holdings of Ptolemy II. And because he was traveling with a couple of helpers, and when you move from place to place, you need to keep up with your supplies, but you can't carry your supplies because you're on the move, you need to pick up supplies from place to place as you go. And Zenon picked up, among other things, flour, because you need flour to make bread to keep you sustained on your journey overseeing the king's holdings. So Zenon collected flour, and that's what this receipt is for electron flour. And at each place that he went, he wrote down how much flour he picked up. So he went, first of all, to Stratos Tower, Stratonos Pyrgos, and he abbreviates. This is my favorite thing about the papyrus. I like a lot of things about these papyri. I just feel like they look like somebody's shopping list. I don't know if you guys read this anymore. When I was in high school, everybody had to read this science fiction book and I can't now remember the title offhand, but it starts, and there's a nuclear, it's like nuclear winter, and almost everybody is dead, but there's a couple of people who are still alive, and it opens with a shopping list, eggs, milk, juice, like that sort of thing. Like that's the only thing that would be left. That's what I think of sometimes when I get the Zenon papyrus. So anyway, so he goes first to, he starts off in Stratonos Pyrgos, where he picks up 5 artibas of flour. Epsilon is for 5. AR, alpha rho, is the abbreviation for artibas, which is the measure, like you would pick up that many sacks. So he picks up 5. Then he goes to Jerusalem, where he picks up 6, zeta. Anyway, he moves around, and eventually he gets to this site, Kudasoi. And that is this site, Kedesh in Greek, or in English, Kedesh. That's my site. This is my site. I've been excavating here since 1997. I'm the director of this excavation, along with somebody else from the University of Michigan. So it is so fun to be able to take you to my site. All right, so we're up here in northern Israel, right on the Lebanese border. Here's the Hula Valley, Mount Hermon, the Golan Heights, Lebanon, Syria. This is still Israel. This road right here is the northernmost road on the Upper Galilee Plateau. And just off of this aerial view, I am hanging out of the window of a little prop plane here. I don't recommend this as a way to take pictures, but this is a cool picture, you got to admit. So right about where I've got the words here is my site. So this is the edge of the lower plateau, and here we have a huge building, and it was to this building in 259 BCE that Zenon came. And now you are looking at it in aerial view looking north, and in that room that I just marked a little X on, when we excavated that room in 1999, this is how we found it. There's a plaster floor, and there are jars leaning against the walls. And that's what one of those jars looks like when you put it together. It's about the same size as me. I'm a jar. And yeah, they're about 5 feet tall, these jars, maybe a little bit shorter. And inside them, they had grain. I did residue analysis, that's how I know. So I just have to point out that this is pretty much the cutest thing on earth. That we have this papyrus from Zenon who comes here to pick up 2 artibas of flour in 259 BC, and we found the jars that held the flour that Zenon picked up. And we even identified what kind of grain it was, and it was one of those fancy new cultivars that Ptolemy II was so interested in. It was bread wheat. The most common kind of wheat up in this area is Triticum durum, which is like pasta wheat. And Ptolemy was experimenting, and he was experimenting growing bread wheat in the valley down below that you saw in that aerial view. And that's the kind of wheat that we had in these jars. Well, the Ptolemies held, so that's just a cute little aside. Okay. The Ptolemies held on to, yes? What was inside the jars, how we determined that there was wheat inside the jars is that I did residue analysis, scraping the interior surface and doing a chemical process with it, and I found phytoliths, which are the translucent skin off the husk of the wheat of Triticum aestivum, which is bread wheat. In other words, I didn't find a bunch of flour in the bottom of the jar. I found a bunch of dirt in the jar. Yeah, you don't want the jars. Jars are big and heavy. The jars are like your cupboard. It's like a big pantry. So that room that has 14 jars is, in a way, a small granary. You know, this it had. In fact, I actually also calculated what was the volume measure of each of these jars. I did it with beanbag pellets. And I figured out how many loaves of bread 1 jar of wheat full could make using 3 cups of flour per loaf. I make bread. So, when you're an archaeologist, really, it's good to be, very flexible in all sorts of ways. And you can make over 200 loaves of bread. So from the amount of wheat in 1 jar. So when Zenon comes here, he just needs a couple sacks. That's a lot, very heavy. Right, exactly. And what people must have done, the people who lived in the larger region, in order to pay their taxes to the Ptolemies, they brought wheat. They didn't pay their taxes in money. They paid their taxes in produce. There you go. That makes more sense, right? Yeah. No, the jars would be. And you know what? If people transported containers, they would have had sacks. We don't have those. Those have deteriorated over time. We haven't had clay, because that remains. But so if somebody were to have taken a whole lot away, they would have had it in something that would have been lighter to carry and not breakable. And recyclable. They were all green back then. Okay, so all throughout the 3rd century, this region was fought over between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. And you're looking here at our friend Antiochus III, he whose reach exceeded his grasp and was knocked down by the coalition of the Rhodians Attalus, the Pergamene king, and Rome. You recall this Antiochus. But closer to home, he prevailed over the Ptolemies in a battle in the year 199 and won this coveted slot of land on the eastern Mediterranean seaboard. And when he did that, he inherited the site of Kedesh. Now, I just need to back up for a second before we go back to Kedesh to point something out to you. When you look at a map of any ancient territory, it's important to keep in mind that there are maps and there are maps. So there are maps like this nice green map on the side that makes this place look like one place. You don't see any borders. They're just dots for sites. This is a map of the same place, and there are all these different colors, and the different colors go with different cultural groups. Because in this place, it might have been part of one political kingdom, but it was not one people, not one cultural group. All across the Hellenistic East, there were different cultural groups, people who spoke different languages, who had different ancestral traditions, different legal systems. They worshipped various gods. And generally speaking, that was just fine with everybody. You went into another zone. People spoke a slightly different language, maybe, some people. Although everybody who had any education spoke Greek throughout all of these territories. In this zone, there were several population sectors. Along the coast and in the valleys were the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians are the first millennium successors to a people that you might know from the Bible as the Canaanites. The Phoenicians were seafarers, and they are the same people who taught the Greeks how to write. That is, remember back when the Greeks pick up writing again, way back? So the alphabet that they pick up is the Phoenician alphabet, those same Phoenicians. Those Phoenicians are living here along the coast. In the interior, in the hilly areas of the interior, north and south, in these orange zones, and then also a little bit on the other side of the Jordan here, are people that we know today as Jews, but in this period of time they actually would have been called Judeans. That is, they were the people from the interior, and they are the people who are the successors to the biblical Israelites. So you have Canaanites on the coast. That makes it easy to remember. And Israelites in the interior. See, Canaanites coast, Israelites interior. That's good. So in our period, that's Phoenicians, and you can go ahead and call them Jews. And then there were Greek cities, and they are in the orange color on the map. Gadara is one of those. So you see Gadara here in the orange area on the map. And you then get a sense of perhaps why Meleager was anxious to assert his Greekness in the face of all these other weirdos in and amongst whom he lived. So this is the reality underneath the consistent political scrim of Seleucid control in this area. So Antiochus III inherits when he defeats Ptolemy V in a battle. He inherits all of this territory. He inherits all of the economic largesse that he's going to get from it. And among other things, he picks up this site, because it's in the territory that he inherits, and he picks up this great big administrative building that is in the site. So where the X is the granary, the grain storage room. In the time that the Seleucids control the site, they do a little interior modification to the building, and they add some functions. And one of the functions that they add is the room that I just put an X on in the corner. And now you're looking at it in view, and it was an archive room. It was a records office. Now, you may wonder, looking at it in this direction, how we can know that it was a records office. It looks empty. And in this view, it is empty. But when we excavated it, we found, you see a little pile here in the corner of this sieve, and a Minnesota student looking at something very hard that she's holding in her hand. We found over 2,000 of these little jobbies. That's my hand, so you get a sense of scale. What are they? They're clay. In this guise, they're fired, but originally they were unfired clay that had been impressed with a seal. So they are sealings, S-E-A-L-I-N-G-S, that kind of sealing. Here's how it worked. In antiquity, you wrote a letter. You made a contract. You signed a lease. You rented out part of your courtyard for somebody to use for some activity. You made a marriage contract. You paid your taxes. Whatever it was, the record of it would have been written on a piece of papyrus and rolled up. And then that piece of papyrus would have been tied with a piece of twine. And then you would have taken a little lump of mud or clay and smushed it around the twine and stamped it with your seal. So it's like the return address on an envelope. It's you. The seal is your symbol. The two that I'm holding in my hand here are official. But as we'll shortly see, most of the sealings that were found in the Kedesh archives were private individuals. So sealings came from usually signet rings, and you're looking at some actual ancient signet rings here. This is a signet ring of a Ptolemaic king. So sometimes they were, like I say, very official. So that was the ring of Ptolemy VI. That happens to be King Ptolemy VI. But most often, rings like this Menad here in the middle, or this provocative item, were private. This one comes from Alexandria, Hellenistic Alexandria. It shows a lady seated on a chair, and then a large bird getting a little close to the lady. And in fact, the space between their heads makes a kind of little heart. And this is almost certainly Leda, the gal Leda, and the swan, who would, of course, be Zeus in one of his paramoring trysts. So that was somebody's individual seal in Hellenistic Alexandria. Greek myth, you might wonder whether that belonged to a woman or a man. A little hard to predict who would have liked that. All right. A number of the sealings at Kedesh, like I just said, are official. So all of these 4 that you see here come from the Kedesh archive. There are kings, and they are identifiable because they look like the pictures on their coins. So this is Antiochus III. This is Antiochus IV, almost certainly. He has a diadem on his head. You can see there, just like this. So frequently, kings had their own image on their seal, just like they had their own image on a coin. And if that, of course, evoked Alexander the Great. The anchor that you see here was a royal Seleucid insignia. It was a symbol of the Seleucid Empire, the Seleucid Navy, their thought of control of the sea. We will just ignore the fact that in a sea battle, the Rhodians kicked their butt. Well, actually, it was Hannibal they were busy getting beaten by the Romans up a little further north. And then sometimes we have sealings that we can only tell are official from other evidence. So this one, for example, here is a nude. Probably it's a guy, although he seems to have extremely well-developed pectorals, shooting an arrow. And it's likely to be Apollo. We have about 200 of these, this identical sealing. We have almost 200. And that many suggest that it probably belonged to an official. And that's very interesting, that a Seleucid period official picked Apollo, the Greek god Apollo, who you see here in various earlier guises, similar to the guise on the Kedesh sealing. The anchor, the personal portraits, Apollo are, well, not the anchor necessarily, but the personal portraits in Apollo are very Greek. Also, in the Kedesh archive were about 15 of this particular sealing. The seal would be the original thing that made the impression. This is a little strange. It's got a figure that has a little circular head and a triangle body and upraised hands, and then an inscription. The inscription is in Phoenician, and it reads Ash el Eretz, which means he who is over the land. It's probably the sealing from a seal of another official, a lower level official, who worked at the site, but this official is very specifically not Greek. This official has, first of all, a Phoenician inscription, not a Greek inscription, writes in Phoenician. And second of all, who's this? This is the depiction of a Phoenician deity, and the deity is Tanit, T-A-N-I-T. The most noticeable thing about Tanit is that she's not representational. She's schematic. Think about Apollo, who looks just like a human being, and this is very specifically not that. In fact, it almost seems as if the point is to be not representational. You see some of these, this same figure, Tanit, in these little charms, and I mean, I'm talking little. You know, there may be 1.5 inches high. They would have been things that you could have worn on a necklace or on a bracelet, and they come from one of the Phoenician cities on the Levantine coast. And you see another example of Tanit in this mosaic floor. This mosaic floor is in the hallway of a house. So what would you suppose about the house that has this in the hallway of the house? Yeah, you would think that the person who lives there is Phoenician. It's this house on Delos. The house of the dolphins. Remember this house? Yeah. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? A Phoenician lived on Delos. Yeah. A Phoenician lived on Delos and lived like a Greek, but was interested in making sure that people knew that he was not.
Might this be an intermarriage too? I mean, maybe the woman came from Phoenicia, married a Greek or something like that.
Well, nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing is impossible, and everything is speculatable, yeah. But that's exactly what it is. I mean, you're just, you know, you can make up all sorts of stories. But you don't really have to get too many steps out ahead. So there are, like I said, over 2,000 sealings from the Kedesh archive. And about 10% of them are official, meaning that there are about 1,800 private sealings. Most of these we only have one image of. So somebody at one time sent a document to be stored at the archive. Let's see, here you've got Athena holding a little figure of Nike, victory goddess, in her hand. Here you have, who must this be? In the middle, on the top. What's it a figure of? What? No, it's a human being. I guess they are hard to see if you don't necessarily know. This is a lady. Here's her identifying feature, that way. Standing in profile, she has no clothes on. She's either just gotten out of the bath or just about to get into the bath. She's doing something with her hair, but really what she's doing is posing. You know, I mean, the fact that she's doing something with her hair is just so that her arms can be up and out of the way, so that you can see the rest of her. A more modestly garbed lady, beautifully dressed, her hair done up, seated in a chair, looking at a lily. A man, an individual. You can see his features quite clearly. He has a not very flattering bowl-like haircut, large ears, sort of baggy eyes. The middle one down here is another one of these mythological scenes. There is an eagle, wings outstretched, looking fierce, and a young guy, a young lad. This must be Zeus and Ganymede. So this is similar to the ring that we saw from Hellenistic Alexandria lead in this one. You know which mythological or Greek deity this must be? Eros, right. Wings, little musical instrument. So you live someplace in the Eastern Mediterranean and you need to send a letter to the Kedesh archive. Which of these seals would be yours and why? Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to have a little chat and think about this, and then I just want you to rip off a corner piece of paper and vote. And we're just going to collect them all, and Katie's going to compile them. We're going to see how many people pick what seal. That way you don't, if you want to pick Aphrodite, you don't have to actually raise your hand and confess. Yeah, they'll write the name on it.
Can you see the twine imprints on the backers? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you can see the papyrus threads.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering with the spinning to see which direction they were spinning their, because that would be good of it, you know.
You know, the thing is about the twine is that it's inside the hole. The seal is pushed around the twine. So on the back of the ceiling, you can see the papyrus threads. And you can see the hole, and you can see the. So I mean, maybe you would be able to tell just from looking at the outside.
S or Z twist, if you'd be able to see it.
You know, the seals are all down in Jerusalem in a safe, so I don't even have any up there so that we could look. That is a great question.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. Does Anna Father see this too? Oh, okay. It's too bad. We didn't know if there was, which way they were twisting.
I know. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so people will pass them down this way, and then you can collect them. When you write down when you vote, send it down. Send it down. Katie's going to collect and compile. We'll move on, and then we'll come back when she's compiled. We'll find out how many pick pick what, and then we can get back and talk about it. Seated lady. Seated lady, Aphrodite, Athena, Eros, Zeus and Ganymede, man. I know, they're so cute.
These are not baked clay.
They're not baked clay. The archive room was set on fire at some later point. So it was really handy for us in two ways. One, all the papyri burned, which was great, because then we weren't saddled with all these boring little, ancient grocery lists and things. That would have just been terrible. They would have been really boring, and they would have cost us a lot of money in, conservation and care, and that would have just been awful. So fortunately, we don't have any of the papyri, but they burned the ceilings, which was good because, I don't know if you know this, but when you dump a bucket of dirt in a sieve, the first thing that you do is with your hand, usually because you have a glove on, you sort of rub along it so that all of the loose stuff goes down into the wheelbarrow, and then you pick through it to find things. And if they hadn't been fired, we probably would have destroyed most of them, just dumping them through the sieve and then sort of grinding them down through but because they were fired. And this really, among the many fun moments that I've had in my life as an archaeologist, this must be at the top. One day, standing on the side of one of the trenches, that same student that you saw in the picture there, who was the first one to find some of these. We had absolutely no idea there was an archive room, so we had absolutely no idea we were going to find any of these. This is the largest archive found in the Eastern Mediterranean. Comes up to me with two of these little things in her hand, and I mean, you could actually literally see them just that clear. All you had to do was go, kind of blow off. And she said, "Are these something?" Yes. Okay. We're going to move on and we'll come back. So we're going to go to another site now in the southern part of Ptolemy and the Seleucus' kingdoms, and that is in this region down here in the south called Idumea. And the site that we're going to go to is Marisa, ancient Marisa. Marisa had an acropolis with walls, towers, and blocks of houses, and some public areas, as you can see. But below the acropolis, around the outskirts and then spreading out, was a lower town. And you see the beginning of excavations in the lower town here. That plan that you just saw is from an excavation of the Acropolis back in 1912. So it's back in those days, it was like D.W. Griffith, a big cast of many people cleared the entire thing. They made one great big plan, and then it all got covered up again. So we have this great big plan, but we don't have any details. But down in the lower part of the city, we've got, like I say, you can see a narrow view there, starting to be some houses, and there's blocks of houses. Here are some of them. Just so, like Delos, just lots and lots of houses where regular people were living. Here's one of those houses. Typical house in the lower city of Marisa. I couldn't remember what was coming next. I couldn't remember what I was going to tell you about that. So you notice here that you walk in from the street, and there is an internal courtyard where this person is. I don't know why the artist who drew this guy standing like he's been naughty, and he's been made to stand in a corner facing the wall, which is ridiculous. I'm always so tempted to Photoshop him out, but he's good for scale, so I leave him in there. And I always think, why is he drawn like that? Anyway, so he's standing looking at the wall. There's nothing on it. And there's nothing in the courtyard, right? So the interior courtyard is to get light and air into the house, but there's nothing in the courtyard. So And there's nothing decorating it. There's no mosaic floor. There are no columns. So it's very different than a very different kind of house than the sort of houses on Delos. For example, like this one that you're looking at here. Columns, mosaics. All right. Inside the houses, there are a lot of Greek interior decor effects. So up here, there were in some of the houses stucco columns, so just decorative add-ons, shaped like Ionic columns. And there is furniture, so these are table legs for little tables, and the legs are shaped like Ionic columns. So Greek style decor inside the house. And the items that people had in their daily life were Greek style as well. So this, for example, is a jar, a little amphora for mixing wine and serving wine at the table, and it has a shape that is identical to shapes that were made at that time in Athens, and decoration is the same as the decoration that was made that time in Athens. Although the pot itself was made at Marisa, but what it copies is just like what was current at Delos or Athens or any place in the Greek Aegean and Mediterranean at that time. But there are also things in the houses that are weird and different. So, for example, here in the corner of all of the houses, there are stepped pools, little stepped bathing facilities, quite small, as you can tell from this the drawing of the person's head sticking up. So they're just individual size. Maybe they were simply for cleansing, in which case everybody had that, and maybe they were for some sort of ritual that we don't know anything about, because these folks didn't leave us any written records explaining what they were doing with these stepped pools. But what they show us is that in addition to the fact that the courtyards are quite different, despite the fact that the people who live here know a lot about Greek style and like it, there are aspects of their daily life that are their own, that are different than Greek style. Inside a lot of the houses, figurines. Some of the figurines are of Greek subjects. So these are the divine twins, Castor and Pollux. They are the progeny of Leda and the Swan, along with Helen of Troy. She's their sis. So very canonical Greek subject, Greek religious subject. Fancy drinking vessels, some with, again, Greek themes. Athena with her shield and a very strange helmet. But then also, this has got a horse head, so this fancy drinking cups that don't now look anything like the Greek-style drinking cups that you saw from Delos. So Greek-style wine serving vessels, Eastern-style drinking vessels. Some figurines that are just, like a guy and a camel, probably, and it's something that, again, looks like your fourth grader brought it home. I just have this because it's so darn cute. Another camel. And then figurines that are unique to this site. They have heads, but nothing else. No body to go with them. These are pretty common at Marisa. There are well over 50 of them. They very occasionally, like this one here on the right, has an identifiable a head that almost looks like a Greek-style head, and breasts, but then the rest of it is just this straight, undifferentiated pillar. Sometimes the heads are less well delineated, and the fact that there are two of them is pretty odd. And we have these figurines at one as the most common kind of female depiction in the houses at Marisa. We have none of this style figurines, the little Tanagras, the little ladies like this. She comes from Alexandria. Let me know when you get all tallied up there.
Oh, I'm done.
Oh, you're done? Okay. Yeah, so this is really interesting. Again, at one and the same time, in this part of the world, the people who lived here knew about this sort of figurine. I mean, they knew about all sorts of Greek-style things, but they chose not, in this particular case, to have any of these, although they had other Greek-style figurines, like the Dioscuri or the Athena on the protome, the end of the rhyton, the little Athena head on the end of the conical drinking vessel. So why not these? If you were having to figure out, it was your job to study and publish the figurines from Marisa, how would you explain the absence of these, which are the most common sort of depiction and figurine type in the Hellenistic Eastern Mediterranean? What might you guess? You want to have a little chat? Okay, have a little chat.
This one was identified as Spock.
Oh.
And then fish, but at least he only had one.
Only one?
Yeah. And then personal portrait was 4, seated woman was 6, Athena 9, and then Zeus 10.
And then only one in each of these. Oh, that's so interesting. So what do you think? Why not? What do you think? Maybe they just didn't want to depict their women the same way? Ah. And that would beg the question, why not? Right? What do you think? What do you think?
We looked at it as like her eye, maybe like a different like movement. Like you go so long, and then you have like for like realism, then you like special like cubism.
Oh.
Or something else where it's like it's from this very realistic interpretation to more like style. Like it is looked at.
That it's simply a stylistic affectation is an idea, but if that would be the case, then how would you explain that they have Athenas or the Dioscuri? So they have human figures naturally represented. And sometimes those human figures are female. and are quite identifiably female. So, what's going on here? I don't, you know, when I argue with you guys, it doesn't mean you can't be wrong. You know, this, of course, the absolutely best thing among the many best things about archaeology. The best thing about archaeology is that you can all be right. Who knows? We don't actually know. But I just point out that there is other evidence that might suggest that there's another way of looking at it. What do you think? Maybe they just wanted to preserve their own culture. So then what's with those? What do you think?
Is this site recognizably Jewish or polytheistic?
Well, it's in Idumea. These things date to the 2nd century BCE. There are no recognizably Jewish things anywhere in the country at this time. Idumea is not Judea. In fact, it's an area that's conquered by the Maccabees, so the Judeans didn't think that the Idumeans were the same as them.
So it does not have recognizable Jewish, basically, part of a polytheistic local cult that's just confined to an area. These could be like bizarre.
They could be bizarre cultic figurines that are confined to this area, and in fact, that's what the person who published them thinks, that's exactly what she thinks. So that would explain these, but it wouldn't explain the absence of these. So anyway, you're halfway to what the person who published them thinks, but why is she missing? First of all, you know, it's not like these things are difficult to acquire. It's not like they're expensive. It's not like they're rare. It's not as if the people who lived at Marisa didn't have access. They could copy Greek wine serving containers. They had Ionic pilasters and table legs. Not that they didn't know or didn't like Greek things. What did we think these little ladies represented? Ladies of the house. And what about them as ladies of the house? So if you visit a house with figurines such as this, what's the message about who the people are, what they stand for, how they live, whatever, fill in the blank. What do you think? Mm-hmm. They do chores?
Wasn't it supposed to be they were more along the lines of like luxury? They didn't have to be like they would have the ability to be able to do household things, but they didn't because like I thought it was like because of the drapery, like it isn't something you could like work in.
Right.
It wasn't idealized. Like you had enough money that you didn't.
Right. That's what we decided because they are beautifully garbed. Sometimes they have elaborate hats. I mean, yes, they might be strolling back from market holding some tiny little container of fruit. But, you know, they're not carrying gigantic shopping bags. You know, these are not people who are working. These are not people who have to work. These are not only ladies of the house, but they are ladies of a sufficiently wealthy house that they don't have to toil. And they represent that class. Now, it's not I would just like to point out, as if people who live at this site at Marisa are poor. It's not like, oh, well, there's nobody rich here, and that's how come there just aren't any ladies like that here. So it's not this type of house. It's this type of house. Now think a little bit more about why we don't have any figurines of those sorts of ladies. Have another little chat.
So I just got the low side from
Oh,
Kate last
good.
week, so I'm gonna try to work on the map sometime soon. I have one paper to finish, so I'll try to get it done in between there.
You're fine. I'm so... Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, most of them seem like they have identified rooms, but some of them are on the walls, so I'm not sure how
You know, it's not... I mean, they are in fills. They aren't like sitting on floors. So, I mean, they're already displaced. So. Okay, what do you think? So the courtyards are not decorated. The houses, I mean, obviously they're spacious enough that people, there's room to entertain. You can have guests, you can have company. But it's not, there's not any aspect that is really showing off for display. The houses have a more private and perhaps more utilitarian character to them.
I'm wondering if there was a slave class here.
There were slaves everywhere. Everywhere. In the Xenon papyri, Xenon actually carts slaves back and forth. People send slaves from one person to another, and he's like the person who carries them along. What do you think?
Well, they've kind of been like really picky about the aspects of Greek culture. They want that, so maybe that's the little holistic they took that.
They are picky. They are picky about what sorts of Greek culture to adopt. That's interesting, huh? Aspects, so some aspects are good. This aspect that we're now trying to figure out why it's missing, therefore, it's not that it's just a casual absence. You might surmise, considering the number of figurines we have, the number of houses, the commonness of that type of figurine every place else, including other sites in Israel, that this is actively rejected. So what those little ladies stand for is not desired by the people who live here. And really, it's not as if they stand for something revolutionary, unless it's revolutionary that the lady of the house be seen in public, nicely garbed, standing on her own, worth portraying, even though she's not a deity or she's not actively working. In other words, worth portraying just because, just like the men who have a full-length portrait statue, a woman of a certain class is worth portraying just because. Because people have that kind of place in the world. Unless, of course, they don't.
Just an idea. We talked a little bit about this last week. Kind of tying in with the excerpt from Marcus saying how says I loathe all common things. Maybe this is a way for them to say that they, really don't like how this depiction of women has been going on. It's kind of saying like, oh, has it really come down to this? You're kind of celebrating you just waiting around the house and not really doing anything.
There is an aspect of the depiction of females that is not here at Marisa, and that is a female in and of herself, in real time and real space. So the females that are depicted are deities. Greek goddesses, that's fine. And to be fair, we don't have men either. We don't have just, there's no statuary or figures of guys. Of all of the aspects of Greek cultural portrayal and identity that we have noticed time and again from the very beginning of this class, the value of and the willingness to depict a human individual has hit us over and over. That's what we do not have here. When they're picky about what aspects of Greek culture to adopt, that's not one of them. I'm just going to go. Okay. And let's see. What did we get? How many seated ladies? 6. How many Aphrodites? 1. Either you people are not telling the truth or nobody likes her. How many Athenas? 9. How many Erotes?
1.
Oh, but he's so cute. How many Zeus and Ganymede? 10. Zeus and Ganymede wins? How many men?
4.
Oh, only 4. Zeus and Ganymede wins. Somebody tell me why Zeus and Ganymede is so great. Oh, action. Oh, so something's going on. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so even if the action is the takes 2 to tango type, it's more interesting. And so for everybody but the one person who picked Aphrodite, why not? So I can't implicate anybody. I'm not picking the person who picked her. Anybody else? Why not? Why would you not pick Aphrodite? I'm not going to point, lest I point to the person who picked her, so somebody has to raise their hand. What's the matter with her? What's the matter with her?
It just didn't seem like the sort of thing you would want representing you out in the world. Like, I happen to pick the guy in the lower left corner to be the most representative of the person who has the feel.
So he's the most individual. The most individualized.
I mean, I wouldn't really want big Aphrodite representing me out in the world. Just like,
Although, it's a deity. So it's not like it's you, but it's because she's got no clothes on, and it just feels like
that, and I mean, like, it's Aphrodite. She just seems less respected in general than, like, Athena or Zeus.
oh, so this is not really too serious. So it's that aspect of the Hellenistic world, like the slipper slapper, where it's you can all feel a little sniffy, like, oh, get real. So I mean, compared to her, you can see why you'd think, okay, Athena with victory, right? That more serious, more. I saw another hand around here somewhere. Who had their hand up? Rachel.
I was just going to bring up the slipper slapper.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. That's that. Right. So it's like and I mean nothing by saying this because some of you may fall into this category, but people who wear T-shirts that say dumb stuff, right? You know, T-shirts that say things, this is like the equivalent of a seal, except that you can have more than one. You could have had more than one seal too, I guess, but they weren't so cheap. The ceilings are cheap, but the seal, you have to get it carved. It's probably made out of some kind of special stone. But, you know, you're saying something when you wear a T-shirt, right? You either can wear a T-shirt where you blend in with everybody else, or something that is very specific, and it can be stupid, or it can be raunchy, or it can be, you know, something that makes you feel really smart, like with academic affiliation on it or something like that, where you think, oh, people will think I'm very smart when I wear this. And maybe that's what you think if you have Athena. Now that would be a very fun thing, is to come up with a modern T-shirt equivalent for each one of these. Oh, okay, so which one was the winner? It was this one? No kidding. Who? Why this one? For anybody who picked it. Why the seated lady? She's my favorite. Why? Come on, somebody picked her. Tell me. Yes. And to get all the way back to what we were just talking about a little bit ago, with the absence of the elegantly dressed lady figurine type from Marisa, the statue of Cleopatra from Delos notwithstanding, the common way to depict a female in this period is you can depict an individual female, but she's a type. She's an upper-class lady. She's nicely dressed. Here she has nothing better to do, nothing more pressing than to sit in a beautiful chair and smell a flower. So she is a lady of leisure. She has time on her hands. So she's upper class, she's nicely dressed, and that's a type. As opposed to the man, who is a specific individual. But even this type, the individuality of this type, is more specific than, and more of an individual than, for example, those schematic pillar figurines or Tanit. Okay. Watch out, because we have to move ahead here really quickly. Okay. Marisa has an underground component. The site sits on a layer of hardened limestone, below which is soft chalk, and the soft chalk is easily carved out, as you see from this person who's standing up on top there. And all of the houses have, and you can see it right there, an underground part. So there are the steps going into the underground part. And here's what it's like when you get down there. So there are these big caves, and they connect one to another. Some of the caves are used as dovecotes for birds, pigeons. And here's the largest one. It had room for over 1,000 birds. Some of the caves are used for industrial installations, so these are oil presses. There's a map that shows the Acropolis, and then this is the area of the lower city, and then all of these little squirmy black things are caves, are cave complexes. And most of them are tombs. That's where the people's dead were buried.
Under the houses or outside the city?
Outside the city. Outside in the perimeter around the where the housing is. So here are the steps down to one such tomb. And here's what it's like when you walk in. And you see that there are slots along the walls for the bodies. So this is a family or group sepulcher. And you see also that there's painting on the walls. So this is the painting on the back wall. What are the sorts of vases that decorate either side of the door? And what kind of amphoras are they? They're very, very clearly panethonic amphoras. No other amphora has this particular kind of shape. And the artist has made very clear it's got a black bottom and a black top, and then the red band across the middle. It's got the ribbons. The artist has made ribbons coming from the handles. So when's the last time we saw a depiction of a panethonic amphora? Delos, in a house in Delos, right? House of the Trident. So the panethonic amphora has become a kind of symbol of Greekness, Greek culture, Greek know-how. We happen to know who's buried in this tomb. Here's his inscription, written in, what language is this? All you fraternity and sorority people, what are these letters? Yes, they are Greek. They are Greek. We have this guy's name, we have his patrimony, we have how long he lived, we have how long he died, and what it says and what it means, that we will talk about first thing on Thursday.